Side toffee, toffee apples, sticky toffee pudding. There's loads of toffees that we like. But speaking of puddings, let's hope that we don't make a meal out of the weekend's game against Everton and that it's us, the victors, toasting a triumph at Goodison Park. This is Talk of the Trinity.
And welcome to the latest edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. I am still just about Baz Barrett. I am not joined in person or virtually by Mr. Trinity himself, Will Forrest, but do not worry, you will be hearing his views later on in the podcast. But if you can't wait until then, where you can always hear Mr. Trinity's views is on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby we are keeping you up to date with all the latest Villa news, rumours. There's even a poll or two on there for your... Just get involved, in terms of the starting lineup, score predictions, transfer, rumours, just absolutely everything. Getting your input in there, really appreciate it. Or if you want to reminisce on a time where you could see both me and Mr. Trinity together at the same time, you can check out the visual episodes on our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity. Or if you like what you're listening to and the audio version is right up your street, then you can check out our audio providers, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Google. We are also on FanHub and perhaps some other areas as well. But speaking of all areas covered, it does lead us into having to talk about what happened at Villa Park last Saturday in the 12:30 kickoff when Arsenal came to town and went away with the 3 points. Aston Villa 2, Arsenal 4. And you may have heard the saying of, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. You may also need to come to terms with the other saying it to do with life of sometimes it just kicks you in the balls and all you can do is just roll around on the floor for a bit until the pain goes away, which is why this podcast is coming out later in the week, just before the weekend's action, because metaphorically speaking, we have been rolling around this week trying to come to terms with what happened at Villa Park. And that image, that moment of Arsenal's third goal, the ball bouncing back off Martinez's head over the line, and then him steaming up the field to try and make amends and leaving Arsenal open for the fourth. But funnily enough, I'm going to say, in terms of one of the most positive things I found about that game was after the game, you would expect a manager or former managers of Villa to talk about, great performance from the lads. We kept in the game till the very end, and we were unlucky. Not Unai Emery. He was having none of it. He was talking about how disappointed he was with the performance, and in respect to when Villa went one up early on, that the game plan that he set went out the window. And I think long term, that is going to be a positive mindset for this team, that Emery expects more from this team. He does not put too much stock in being a gallant loser, the runner-up. He wants this team to win. And he believes that if they execute his game plan, that they will win. And we have seen evidence of that already in his reign at Villa. And, I like it. I like it, in terms of not accepting second best, which Emery is. And, we've talked about in terms of the January transfer window, not too many incomings, expecting more in the summer. And the Emery revolution, in terms of his dropping those hints that if the players that he's got at his disposal at the moment for the rest of the season don't live up to his standards and are not able to put in the game plan that he wants, then he will more than happily go and get some more, in terms of players who he thinks will. And, with his long-term contract, you would expect the board to back him. And speaking of that tactical plan, we did talk about in the preview about how, we almost didn't really spend much time talking about the shape because we thought it'd be 4-4-2, no surprises to see here. But there was a bit of a surprise in terms of that lineup in playing Bundia and Coutinho together in the team. It was something that Gerrard tried on occasion, but we weren't particularly expecting Unai Emery to play in that way. But he did, and it seemed to surprise Arsenal, based on, Villa being able to get that early goal. And that shape in midfield, there was a diamond on occasion. Bundia, Coutinho tailed behind Watkins on occasion. So it did leave Arsenal guessing. And, especially in terms of the early performance, Arsenal, I think they were taken aback. They weren't on it, but Villa certainly were, especially in that first half. They were chasing every opportunity, every lost cause, every poor pass from Arsenal. And, that was the story of the first half, really, and contributed to Villa going 2-1 up. I mean, the first goal, just playing through the lines, Arsenal not really defending very well and Villa taking full advantage. Another great finish from Ollie Watkins. I feel like we spent most of the time, Ollie Watkins has been at Villa, talking about how he's not a natural finisher. Whisper it quietly. Is he developing into one under Emery? I mean, his goal scoring record is standing up to scrutiny under Emery, and another good finish. I mean, I'd say in terms of that first goal, great finish, terrible defending. And in terms of the second goal, you could say something similar. Another great finish, but Arsenal did allow themselves to be cut up to allow that precision passing play to the edge of the box. But, it's still a great finish from Coutinho. You can see how much he meant to him when the goal went in. And continuing the theme of good finish, terrible defending, I think that does sum up Arsenal's first goal, really. Saka, great finish. Can't deny that, but pretty much anywhere else, Mings should have been heading that. And I think he was trying to say afterwards, where else was he meant to put it? Behind, I think, for one. But we spend a lot of time talking about Mings, but he signed a new contract. The position hasn't changed currently in terms of defenders currently in the squad at Villa's disposal. We do not have any better than Mings, and the team suffers when he is not in it currently. So you have to have the rough of this move with Mings, and the rough it was very much heading the ball straight back into the penalty box to allow Saka to score. Then, Shinchenko's second goal, nice finish on the edge of the box, but a bit too easy in terms of that finish. And, shithousery happened kind of at the end. And I'm not talking about Martinez's attempt to probably waste about 20 minutes of time on his own before that goal went in. But, there were other positives as well. Duran came on. Again, he looks lively. Is he going to get a start? In terms of, you'd expect a current shape. If it is one up front, just Watkins, you'd expect no. But, he's certainly working his way into the equation. And on the basis he wasn't an Emery signing, we don't think. The job of the scouting team, we believe, identifying him as a target and bringing him in. You think perhaps might take a little bit more time to get into Emery's good books, but if he carries on with performances like that, then you can see why the scouting team were so keen to bring him in, even with the change of manager. But you can prove anything with statistics. That was second game in a row at home. Villa have conceded 4, third defeat in a row, but there's signs of positivity, things to work on. And, that's what you'd expect from a mid-table team, really, which is what we are. Although from a personal perspective, it was nice to see Matty Cash back in the team. I mean, I think in terms of however well Ashley Young has done, he's not, just through age, really, not the long-term option. So I would be wary about letting Cash sleepwalk out of the club by not giving him the opportunities. So I was glad to see him in the team, and I thought he did all right. So, the result may have been as expected. The way we got there probably certainly wasn't, but plenty of things to work on and plenty of things to remain positive about. But speaking of positivity and things to work on, will those opportunities be available to Villa in their next Premier League game at the weekend when we go to Goodison Park to play Everton? And Villa have had a new manager in Unai Emery a couple of months ago. Everton's new manager is of a more fresher vintage in Sean Dyche. Didn't get the opportunity to really bring any players in the transfer window, but it's a tactic almost as old as time in terms of a new manager. First job, make the home stadium a fortress. And pretty much that's what kept Everton up last year under Frank Lampard. And Dyche is looking to repeat the same trick in terms of his opening game, win at home to Arsenal last weekend, win at home to Leeds. So that Everton are going to be targeting this game against Villa as another 3-point opportunity for them in their fight against relegation. And they'll be circling those games in the diary, and they've got enough, you would suspect, to be able to get themselves away from danger. At time of recording, ahead of the weekend game, they are 1 point above the drop zone on 21 is 16th, West Ham 18th on 20, 3 points away from 14th, although goal difference does play a factor, although they're only 7 points behind Villa, which is quite a story in itself. So last season, Villa went to Goodison Park and got the 3 points. Will the same be happening again? I think it's going to be a battle at Goodison. It's always a game where you are going to be up against it. The fans are going to be really all behind the team, especially after the must-win game against Leeds last week. Leeds in the bottom 3, only 2 points behind Everton, but it's those fine margins at the end of the season that can make the difference. But in terms of Everton, Sean Dyche seen as a safe pair of hands. Will he keep them up? He's got as good a chance as any. But will Everton fall into the Sunderland trap in the latter years of their Premier League existence, whereby they got a manager, kept them up, and had to keep repeating the trick, it seemed like, for the last 3 or 4 seasons that are in the league, and then eventually the rot was just too big. And you've watched the Netflix documentary. When they fell big. And Everton, they've spent a lot of money and haven't got the best squad in the world. Not enough. Where you're thinking in terms of, do they have enough? They spent like £500,000 on this squad, and you're thinking they don't have enough to kind of make it competitive moving forwards. That's on the owners, I guess. But could they potentially be looking at a Sunderland situation in a couple of years? But that is minor speculation. And speaking of minor speculation, that leads us on to minorly speculating about what the score may be. And I think, unsurprisingly, if you would have asked the score prediction a month ago, before Everton had hired their new manager, before Villa lost 3 in a row, it might be slightly different. And it may be slightly different for Mr. Trinity himself, wouldn't he, if you stay tuned for his prediction later on in the show. But for me, I think Villa just need to try and, just get some stability, in terms of they've had 2 games in a week against, top 2 teams in the league, perhaps not expecting too much from those games, but they've got a run of games: Everton, Palace, West Ham, Bournemouth, teams kind of in the bottom half of the table where you're expecting to try and get some points, really. So let's set aside what's happened in the last couple of weeks and, try and get a good footing. And speaking of a good footing, I think a point's a good result, or a result you take, against Everton at the moment. They're on, as I said, their home form is picking up. That's what they're going to focus on. They're going to see this game as a game where they would target for 3 points. They're going to throw everything at it. But from a Villa perspective, defensively, 4-3-4 in terms of goals conceded. So not the strongest at the back. So just trying to get some order in. I mean, funny enough, goals aren't the problem. He's kind of keeping them out, which is why, in terms of my prediction, I think both teams are going to score, and I think it's going to be a score draw, and I am going to go for 1-1 for my prediction. Just kind of steady the ship a little bit and move on, hopefully, to bigger and better things in the weeks ahead. But speaking of moving on to bigger and better things, you are moving on right now to Mr. Trinity himself. He is going to be giving you his thoughts on the Arsenal game and his thoughts about Everton. So let's pass you over to him right now.
Thanks, Baz. I'm not with you. I don't know why I'm thanking you. You won't listen back yourself. Anyway, you guys should. So, Baz has touched upon his thoughts of the Arsenal game, and I'm not going to go over it too much. Arsenal, in my opinion, were the better team. I didn't think that all of their players had to really up their game. Do I feel that the third goal should have counted? No. They were in Martinez's line of vision. And we've seen those goals not given. Plus, I'm a Villa fan, and the goal's been scored against us that was contentious. So, no, of course, I do not think that it should count. The goals that we conceded were poor. The second one was the poorest for me. The first one, Mings is flicking to try and get away the danger. I don't think he can do too much more, really, in that moment, except for maybe heading forward. Then you've got the Zinchenko goal, his first goal for Arsenal from the edge of the box. Very similar to the goal that we conceded against Stevenage. Very disappointing to concede. And the last goal, you can understand that. But you can understand Unai Emery's frustrations as well. Unai is a man who, even if we'd have won that game, would have been frustrated by the goals that we conceded. He's got a long-term project here at the Villa, and you can tell that he wants to do well, that he wants to restore us back to our former glories. And to do that, you have to demand the best from people and get the best out of people. And he obviously doesn't feel that he is. The summer will be very interesting, to say the least. Will Tyrone Mings be replaced now that he signed a new reported 3.5-year contract? We've got Carlos back. Is he going to be starting in the coming games once he regains full fitness? Or does the manager have faith in Concert and Mings? Because he doesn't seem to in Callum Chambers. The left back and right back situations will need addressing as well. It's a bit of hot potato regarding who's going to start. More so at left back. As at right back, Ash has been getting in ahead of Cash. The midfield is seemingly picking itself. Hard-working, industrious players who have the ability to create chances at any given moment. And Ollie Watkins is bang in form. He's taking on the goal-scoring mantle from Danny Ings. He just needs somebody up front with him to share the burden. And speaking of that, we look at Everton. I don't have too much to say about Arsenal, but Everton, who are on a fine run of form with a couple of wins under Sean Dyche, we're going to Goodison Park again to take them on and to see how we can fare against the Toffees. Now, you expect a low amount of goals, really, because they're not scoring too many. They're shoring up more than anything else. I think this season for Sean Dyche, it's very much a case of, well, let's get solid at the back. Let's stay up, which they're going to do comfortably. And then let's build on it from there. He acknowledges that they've got a lot of very good players. He's just not been able to, or previous managers just haven't been able to get the best out of them. Is he the man to do so? Well, it would certainly seem that he is. They're going to be dangerous at set pieces. something that we're not the greatest at defending at the moment, and we've been shitting in a lot of goals. But you know what we always say here on Talk of the Trinity, and that is, if you're on a good run of form, don't play the Villa, because we're the ones to come and break that up for you. If you've been winning, you'll get a draw or a defeat. However, if you've been doing rubbish, you're bound to be handed the 3 points by us. For me, this game is going to be one where we should let Everton attack us that bit more. We should sit back and defend. We should soak up the pressure. And in doing so, that will hopefully create gaps for counter-attacks where we can exploit them, where we can get between their midfield and defensive lines. Does Leon Bailey start this time? Does Jean Duran start this time? Why was Ollie Watkins taken off? Ollie Watkins taken off in the last game. Questions to be answered. But who starts for you out of those? I mean, for me, you want John Duran. He's not scared of anything. Let him run at Tarkowski and Cody and see if they can keep up with him. Let him gazelle up the pitch and get his shots off. Let's get Ollie Watkins in there, as prolific as he's been recently. A man determined to get back into that England squad. Boubacar Kamara, not had the greatest of games back-to-back. Well, not back-to-back. Well, back-to-back at Villa Park recently. He wasn't really in the game against Arsenal. And against Leicester, he made a couple of mistakes. Maybe that's playing on his mind. Would I keep him in the team? Yep, at the moment I would. I'd keep him and Dougie. Donk, you need a place on the bench still. We haven't forgiven you fully for Stevenage. But Donk is a very underrated player. Is that fair? How good is he? Is he a good squad player? Should he be sold? You see a lot of polls, not on our page, where fringe players or players who appear to be fringe players, there's questions asked us, let's sell him. Should we sell him? What do you think, Villa fans? He doesn't play. Let's flog him and get some money in and bring in someone else. And then someone else become a fringe player. And we'll ask if we should sell them. Maybe we do that sometimes. Further to that, you've got the wings. Philippe Coutinho, nice goal against Arsenal. Does that do enough for him to keep his place? Can him and Emi Buendia be the wide players? Does John McGinn deserve to stay in the team? Does JJ make a start? His first since injury. For me, I'd put John McGinn back in. Sean Dyche doesn't like him. He can shout something about his coat again if he wants to. And then we can have Philippe Coutinho on the other side. That's who I would start. I know Buendia's been doing decently, but I'd have little Phil along with Guinea at this moment in time. The back four is a difficult one. Luca Dean would be my first choice at left back, along and inside him Tyrone Mings, Esri Konsa, and then on that right side you've got to be thinking, is this an area where we can hurt Everton? And if it is, who's the best player to hurt them? For me, you want Matty Cash overlapping when John McGinn cuts inside. And of course in goal, despite his recent form, post-World Cup heroics, you've got to go for Emi Martinez. As I say, Everton will be a team who are dogged, who will want to dig their heels in, who will want to get a nice win. A slim win is what they'll be after. Any win will do for us. So score predictions, and I heard Baz's score predictions, and as always, he's negative. I don't care that he said 1-1. He is negative. Negative Baz. But don't worry, I ain't going to be negative for you. I think we're going to turn it around, and I think John Duran is going to be the man to do that. It's going to be Everton 1. Yes, of course they'll score. Aston Villa 2, with a late winner for the boys in claret and blue. Thank you for listening to this shortened podcast. Whether that's on Spotify, Google, Deezer, Freezer, Pleaser, Geezer, Sneezer. Whether you're listening on Apple or any of the other podcast providers. Whether you're watching on YouTube and you're disappointed that you've not seen our faces again, we do appreciate all of the listens, all of the watches, all of the likes, the comments as well, subscriptions. We'd really, 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 really appreciate a lot more subscriptions on YouTube, though we now appreciate that really, 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 really sounds like begging as well. Maybe that's time for me to beg off. This weekend, will the Villa have a difficult time against those sticky toffees? Or will we finally come unstuck and get 3 points in the bag and continue our revolution under Unai Emery? As always, Baz is Villa till he dies. I'm Villa till I die. Cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. Up the Villa.